Although it doesn't feature any large-scale battles, Shogun, a new mini-series now streaming on Hulu across 10 episodes, still manages to be spectacular and visually satisfying, matching any war movie released. Along with vividly depicted Japanese culture and customs, as well as the portrayal of samurai in their prime, Shogun also boasts an incredibly engaging and compelling storyline throughout its episodes. It effectively captures every aspect of the golden age of the land of the rising sun. So today, welcome back to Movie Honey. We are about to dive into all the developments that have occurred in the 10 episodes of Shogun that have been released. Set in the year 1600, a period when Japan opened its doors to trade with the West, after decades, Portuguese Catholics had begun to prosper and establish a clear status in Japan thanks to their trade activities. Moreover, Western beliefs such as Christianity started to spread throughout Japan, and many Japanese converted to Catholicism. These could be seen as covert actions by Portugal to conceal their territorial expansion from rival European nations. This led the Netherlands to dispatch a fleet of 5 large ships with over 500 crew members deep into the east with the goal of expanding their sovereignty and reclaiming territories that Spain and Portugal were encroaching upon. However, the voyage that followed was far from smooth. From a once mighty fleet, only one battered ship with barely 10 starving crew members remained, having been adrift at sea for many days. Despite the bleak outlook, John Blackthorne, the English pilot of the ship, assured that they were nearing land. However, the captain of the ship decided to commit suicide to free himself and left John in charge of making the final decisions. True to John's prediction, the ship eventually drifted to the coast of Japan. Upon their arrival, the situation in Japan was dire. The regent, one of the highest and most powerful positions in Japan, had just breathed his last. However, his only son and heir, Yichio, was still too young and inexperienced to succeed him. Therefore, before his death, the regent divided his power among 5 other regents with equal status. They were Shido Kazunari, Kiyama Ukon Satanaga, Sugiyama Josui, Ono Harunobu, and finally, Yoshi Toranaga, the most trusted by the regent and tasked with protecting the heir after his passing. Additionally, 2 of the 5 regents, Kiyama and Ono, are Catholics. The regent's trust in Toranaga has caused tension among the remaining 4 regents. Therefore, they have collaborated within the council to try to eliminate Toranaga from the race for the highest position, that of the shogun, the military commander. The mastermind behind all this is the regent Ishido. Returning to the European ship that drifted to the Japanese coast, John was subsequently captured by Omi and his samurai and brought before his uncle, the regional lord, Kashiji Yabashige. Recognizing John's animosity towards Catholicism, as he consistently opposed his Portuguese Catholic interpreter while being a Protestant himself, John caught Yabashige's attention. Yabashige took him home for a bath and rest. Moreover, Yabashige saw potential in John's ship, which was loaded with Western firearms useful for the conflict. As a vassal of Toranaga, Yabashige realized that his master was at a disadvantage and on the brink of losing. Thus, Yabashige had to find a way to survive on his own in the future. This is why Yabashige did not execute John on the spot. From this point onward, the film frequently refers to John as Engine, which means pilot in Japanese. Therefore, for the remainder of this video, I will also refer to him as Anjin for familiarity. As for Toranaga, he later appeared before the council in Osaka and realized that he had been betrayed by the other 4 regents. One of his vassals then stood up to defend his master and faced the consequence of having to commit suicide along with his newborn son. This person was Usami Tadayoshi, the husband of Usami Fuji, who is the granddaughter of Toda Hiromatsu, Toranaga's bodyguard as well as his closest friend. Fuji, naturally, did not want her son to commit suicide because of her husband's foolish act. However, she was eventually persuaded by Mariko, Hiromatsu's daughter-in-law, and reluctantly let go of her husband and child. Mariko is also a Catholic. Although confined in Osaka Castle, Toranaga, thanks to his spies, learned about the strange ship at Ejiro. Consequently, he sent Hiromatsu to gather information about it. It seemed they had managed to secure all the treasures and weapons from the ship, but now Yabashige had to hand everything over to Hiromatsu for management. Yabashige then accompanied Anjin to escort him back to Osaka to meet Toranaga. On the ship to Osaka, Anjin met Rodriguez, a Spanish Catholic sailor. At that point, Anjin's ship sailed into a storm, and Rodriguez was thrown into the sea. Thanks to his skills, Anjin managed to navigate the ship back to shore and was adamant about rescuing Rodriguez, with Yabashige escorting him. Driven by his ego, Yabashige descended the cliff himself to save Rodriguez and had an accident. Anjin then witnessed a dramatic and heroic scene as Yabashige, facing imminent death, planned to end his own life rather than being swept away by the waves. However, both Yabashige and Rodriguez were eventually rescued, and Yabashige earned significant respect from Anjin for his actions. On the ship, Anjin discovered that Rodriguez knew about his hostility towards the Spanish, Portuguese, and the Catholic faith, but at that moment, Anjin was powerless to act. The next morning, the ship arrived in Osaka, where Anjin was granted an audience with Regent Toranaga and Mariko. Rodriguez subsequently handed over Anjin's travel log and plans to the heads of the Catholic Church in Japan, who then sent Martin Alvido to spy on Anjin. Martin also served as Mariko's Western language tutor. Naturally, Toranaga did not trust Martin, so during his meeting with Anjin, he had Mariko sit next to him to ensure that Martin did not distort Anjin's words. While they were conversing, Regent Ishido appeared, claiming that Anjin should not be allowed there and demanded that he be taken away to await execution. With no other option, Toranaga pretended to be indifferent about Anjin and allowed Ishido to take him away. However, Toranaga's real intention was to use Anjin as a means to create division within the council, knowing that the two Catholic members would want to execute Anjin quickly, which would help Toranaga delay his own indictment. Indeed, the regents prioritized executing Anjin before prosecuting Toranaga, and Ishido was forced to comply. But Toranaga was one step ahead, having Yabashige dispatch troops to rescue Anjin from the soldiers escorting him for execution. At their next meeting, Anjin detailed the deep enmity between his country and Spain and Portugal and warned Toranaga about the Catholic members of the council who might betray him. That evening, Anjin was attacked by a shinobi assassin. However, Toranaga had previously switched their rooms, so the assassin was quickly dispatched by Toranaga. We are also introduced to Toda Hirokatsu, a skilled samurai serving Toranaga and the aloof husband of Mariko. The next day, Toranaga instructed Yabashige to escort Anjin, Mariko, and his wife Kiri back to Ejiro. After Ishido personally inspected the party leaving Osaka, Toranaga then unexpectedly switched places with his wife to sneak out of Osaka Castle. Although they were nearly discovered, Anjin caused a diversion that allowed the group to continue moving safely. However, as they entered the forest, they were ambushed by forces loyal to Kiyama aiming to kill Anjin, forcing Toranaga to reveal himself and thus exposing to everyone that he had escaped from Osaka Castle. Hirokatsu subsequently sacrificed himself to buy time for Toranaga and his party to board a ship and set sail. At sea, Toranaga was surprised to discover that Ishido's forces had also appeared and were ready to scuttle his ship. At the same time, a Spanish merchant ship had set sail illegally without his authorization. Therefore, Toranaga boarded the ship and negotiated with Ferreira, the ship's captain. After a successful negotiation, Toranaga granted permission for the ship to sail in exchange for protection, as Ishido's forces would not dare attack a merchant vessel. However, Ferreira demanded more, refusing to escort Anjin and insisting he travel on a separate vessel. Despite these challenges, Anjin's naval combat skills enabled him to overcome these difficulties and successfully sail with Toranaga's fleet. Following this incident, Toranaga sent Hiromatsu to the council to convey the message that he was withdrawing from the Regency Council. This meant that Ishido had to find a fifth regent to succeed him. He wanted to prosecute Toranaga. At sea, Toranaga bestowed the noble title of Hatamoto on Anjin and requested that he train his troops in Western military tactics. Upon reaching Ajiro, Toranaga quickly departed to prepare his forces. Left alone in Ajiro, Anjin demanded the return of his ship and crew, but this was unsuccessful. After being granted the new title, Toranaga also arranged for Fuji to become Anjin's wife. With the power of a wife from a prominent family behind him, Anjin's status was now vastly different than before. Being merely a pilot, Anjin's actual combat ability was negligible. However, he excelled in artillery, surprising Yabashige with the accuracy of his cannon fire. At the same time, Nebar Josen, a trusted subordinate of Ishido, appeared and requested Yabashige to report to the regents in Osaka, knowing that leaving would mean certain death. Yabashige cunningly asked Josen to stay in Ajiro for a day to watch a cannon drill. That evening, after gaining new perspectives from Anjin, Mariko and he spent a passionate night together, although the next day Mariko denied it, claiming that the night was actually a gift prepared by her and Fuji. This was also when the cannon drill took place, but Nagakato, Toranaga's son, took unauthorized military action and killed all of Josen's troops, sparking the subsequent conflict. The next morning, Toranaga returned with Hirokatsu, Mariko's husband, whom everyone thought was dead. Toranaga then stripped his son of the command of the artillery corps due to his recent insubordination and handed it over to Omi. Hirokatsu was also assigned to live with Anjin, setting the stage for further events. During a lively drinking session, Hirokatsu compelled Mariko to explain why she was held in such low regard within the family. She revealed that her father, Akechi Jinsai, had killed the former regent, who was also the father of Lady Ochiba Mariko's sister and the only wife who bore a son for the later regent. Due to this cursed act, Akechi Jinsai was forced to behead his own family before committing seppuku. Mariko, however, was already married off to the Hiromatsu family and thus was not implicated. After the drinks, Hirokatsu mistreated Mariko and was confronted by Anjin. Despite this, Hirokatsu bowed to Anjin out of respect for causing trouble in his home. The next day, Anjin discovered that a gardener in his household had been executed for disobeying an order he had given earlier, which angered him as he felt the punishment was unjust. Believing that the Japanese code of honor was excessively rigid, Anjin sought an audience with Toranaga to request permission to leave Japan, but his request was denied. Surprisingly, an earthquake occurred and buried Toranaga under rubble. Fortunately, Anjin found and rescued him from the debris. However, the situation worsened as most of the army Toranaga had previously prepared was dispersed by the earthquake. In Osaka, Lady Ochiba reappeared and told Ishido that the Regency Council now had to follow her directives. Ochiba was the only wife of the previous regent who had given birth to his only son. With Ochiba's presence, the families of all the regents were taken hostage due to her fears of an assassination attempt on her son. Hiromatsu was forced to leave Toranaga's wife and children in the city and escape back to Ajiro to inform Toranaga. Ito, a lord trusted by Ishido and Ochiba, was then nominated to become a regent, but Regent Sugiyama unexpectedly refused the proposal. He and his family tried to flee Osaka, but were intercepted and killed by Ishido's forces. Hiromatsu managed to inform Toranaga of this development, realizing that the council was in disarray and unable to prosecute Toranaga due to a lack of regents. Toranaga's generals proposed a direct attack on Osaka under the code name Crimson Sky, but Toranaga refused due to the high risks involved. Moreover, if all the regents were eliminated, he would be forced to become a shogun, a position he did not desire. However, news of a regent's assassination reached everyone. Toranaga had no choice but to implement Crimson Sky to save himself. As for Anjin, he was granted a night with Kiku, the most skilled and famous courtesan in Izu, but that night, Anjin's thoughts were solely of Mariko. To successfully carry out Crimson Sky, it was crucial to replenish the forces depleted by the previous earthquake. Toranaga had to approach Seiki Nobutatsu, his half-brother, and quickly received his approval after many years of estrangement. However, Seiki had previously agreed with Ishido to take the 5th regent position in the council, and his presence that day was to prosecute Toranaga. Yabashiji was also caught by Seiki and forced to choose a side instead of playing both sides as he had been. Subsequently, Toranaga surprisingly agreed with Seiki to surrender in Osaka, despite opposition from all his subordinates, especially his son. Therefore, that evening, Nagakado went alone to confront Seiki to kill him. But tragically, he died in an undignified manner by slipping and hitting his head on a rock. Before surrendering himself, Toranaga also agreed to requests to build a church for the Catholic faction and a brothel for courtesans in Edo. He refused Mariko's plea to commit suicide and requested the life of Anjin from Hirokatsu. However, there was a silver lining as the death of his son granted Toranaga an additional 49 days to delay the prosecution in Osaka. At this point, everyone was deeply disappointed with Toranaga for giving up everything. Even his closest bodyguard, Hiromatsu, decided to commit seppuku in protest against him. Yet, Toranaga still refused and firmly maintained that he would surrender. Hirokatsu also wanted to commit suicide with his wife to protest Toranaga's decision, but Mariko disagreed because it was actually part of Toranaga's strategy. He decided to feign compliance to make Ishido and other factions fully believe he had given up. That was also when he sent Mariko along with Yabashiji and Anjin to Osaka one last time. Anjin also had a reunion with his crew in Edo, but now, no one trusted him enough to follow him back to England. In Osaka, Ishido proposed a political marriage to Ochiba to strengthen their forces, and she agreed. At the meeting in Osaka, Mariko consistently argued that Toranaga's family should be allowed to leave Osaka instead of living as hostages as they currently were. They attempted to leave, but were unsuccessful due to Ishido's soldiers blocking them. Mariko tried to break out on her own, but obviously couldn't. Faced with this situation, Mariko declared that she would commit seppuku to protest against Ishido's confinement. All the regents in the city expressed their displeasure with Ishido for his treatment of Mariko. Ochiba also met with and urged Mariko to surrender, but she refused. However, just as Mariko was about to perform seppuku, Ishido intervened and granted her safe passage for the following morning. Escaping death, Mariko then had another passionate night with Anjin. Unlike Mariko, Yabashiji did not trust Toranaga and thus allied with Ishido, allowing shinobi to infiltrate and attempt to kidnap Mariko as a hostage and also to kill Anjin. However, the two managed to fight back and escaped into a warehouse along with Toranaga's family and Yabashiji. To breach the door, the enemy decided to place explosives, and Mariko stood by the door, sacrificing herself. After Mariko was properly buried, Yabashiji was also allowed to leave with Toranaga's family. Anjin was escorted separately by Marden, but was not killed. Anjin later realized that it was Mariko who had saved his life this time. Upon returning to Ajiro, Anjin discovered that his ship had been sunk and understood that it was Mariko's sacrifice that had allowed him to live. Yabashiji was then accused of treason and ordered to commit seppuku the following day. The village of Ajiro also suffered as Toranaga continuously sent people to search for traitors. However, this was just a test by Toranaga for Anjin. Seeing this turmoil, Anjin offered to commit seppuku to restore peace to Ajiro and gain Toranaga's trust. The next day, as Yabashiji was about to perform seppuku, Toranaga revealed the entire truth to him before his death, stating that it was he, not Mariko, who had sunk Anjin's ship because Toranaga did not want Anjin to leave Japan. Toranaga also revealed that Mariko was his crimson sky. Her sacrifice was meant to change everything. It would influence the entire Regency Council's future decisions, and even Ochiba would no longer support Ishido in the conflict. After fully understanding the situation and realizing that Toranaga was also aiming for the position of Shogun, Yabashiji committed suicide, content with how things turned out. Everything concluded with Anjin accepting his current position in Japan, and together with others, He began salvaging the ship to prepare for rebuilding the fleet. That is everything that happened in Shogun, an incredibly engaging series that deeply portrays the spirit of the Japanese samurai. What about you? Have you watched the series yet? And what are your thoughts on it? Please leave your comments below. Thank you for watching this video. Goodbye and see you next time. Movie Honey out.